In the last tutorial, we walked through the general gradebook setup with categories and items and weights. In this tutorial, we're going to walk through some of the more specific questions about setting up the gradebook and the questions that I get most often. So, to get started, we'll click on Grades. And the grader report is where you do your grading. The gradebook setup is where you organize your categories and items. So we're going to start in Grader Report. Now if you'll notice, there's nowhere to type in any grades right now. You have to have editing on, so turn editing on. And now you'll see you have a series of boxes pop up. The solid box is where you type in a manual grade item, and the dotted line box is where you type in feedback, or where feedback might appear. Now remember, these categories are going to automatically calculate totals, so you never want to put anything in this box where a category is being calculated, or it's going to override that and it won't actually be calculated into the overall course total. So you can manually put in a grade where you have a manual grade item, or you can override a grade for a Moodle module item, which we'll go over in a minute. So for this student, we have a final exam. If we are using a manual grade item for that and they've taken the exam, then we could type in a manual grade here. And then we could scroll down and hit save. And that grade would be calculated in with the other grades that they've received and the weights that we have set up to give them an overall course total at this point. And I can go in and delete that as well if that's wrong or I put in the wrong one, and that will be reflected. Same thing for participation. For presentation, you can see this is a Moodle module item. These are automatically pushed, the grades are automatically pushed from the Moodle module. The same thing with quizzes. A lot of the questions that I get about quizzes are, why is this grade out? Why can't students see their grades? I'll cover this in the quiz tutorial that I'm going to do as well, but this is hidden and you cannot unhide this from the gradebook side. You have to set the settings on the quiz side. So this has to do with how you have the review options set for students, and the module itself determines whether or not it's pushing grades to the gradebook, and if it's not, then it automatically hides it from students in the gradebook. So this student, if we go to this, we'll see has actually taken the quiz and failed miserably. But that grade is not being pushed to the gradebook. So we need to change the settings. So we click on Edit Settings, and under Review Options, we don't have a closed quiz time, so I'm not going to set it here, but the quiz is still open because I don't have a time that it actually closes according to Moodle with the time. So I'm going to set it here, and I'm going to check points. Once I do that, it's going to push that to the gradebook, and if I go back to grades and go to the grader report, student got a 0 because they got nothing correct. Very poor example of how to do that. But let's say we wanted to give them credit for trying, or we had messed up one of the questions on the quiz and it was a little arbitrary. You can override those grades. So you can manually come in here and you can type in a grade. And I just hit enter, and then you can see that it's orange, which means that it's overridden. And now it's going to be calculating those grades here. So if you had gone in and manually overridden grades for anything or any student, you're going to see that it's in orange. If you changed your mind and you wanted the Moodle module to be pushing the grades instead, you could just go in and click the icon for Edit Grade, and you can uncheck the overridden box, which will clear out this grade that you put in, and hit Save Changes. Also in these settings, if for some reason you had two options for students to take a quiz and they only had to take one of them and you didn't want the other one to count against them, you could check this button that says Excluded, and that particular exam or assignment for that student would not count in their calculations. So I'm going to hit Save there, and now this is back to the grading from the assignment itself. So let's say I wanted to hide the midterm completely because either I haven't graded them all or I just don't want them to see their grades right now. So I can go in and click on Edit here and Show More. And nope, we can't hide it from there because, again, it is being controlled by the activity itself. So let me go back. So because this is not a category, I can't hide the entire thing for all of them, but I can hide this grade for this student. So if I wanted to click Hide here, it would just hide that from the gradebook, even if it did have a grade being pushed, which it does, but if it was not a 0. So I can do the same thing with the course total. So if I wanted to hide the course total, where it says Controls right here, if I click this I, it will hide the course total from students so they could see the grades they've gotten on quizzes that have been calculated, homework they've received, presentations, and any other grades, but they can't see their overall total. You could do the same thing for any other category or individual students. So there's a lot of flexibility with what you can control from the gradebook itself. Okay, another question that I get is, how do I change from points to percentage? So Moodle likes to work in points as an overall grading mechanism, but it's always working in percentages. But we typically grade in percentages. So if you want percentages to show up for the course total instead of a series of points that may not be relevant or reflective of your grading scale, then you want to go to Course Grade Settings from the drop-down menu, and where it says Grade Display Type, the default is set to Real, which is points, and you can change that to straight percentage or real percentage or percentage real, so you can do any combination of that. So we'll just change it to percentage and save changes. And then when we turn editing off is when you'll see those changes reflected. So then you see 0% here. Let me turn editing back on and show you the difference here. So editing on and editing off look different. So if we give this student a 100 for participation, and override this midterm and give them a 55 and unhide that, Put a couple grades in here. What you see when editing is on is points, but when you turn editing off, you're going to see the course total, which is not right at all, because that did very bad things. The reason it did that is because my midterm itself is only worth 10 points, I realize. So that is significantly more. That's giving them 500% more than they actually deserved. So we could give them a 3 instead. That would be more reflective. There we go. See, always making mistakes. Okay, so we have 48.4 points. And turn editing off, and they have a 44% in the class at this point, because it is not including the empty grades. If it were including the empty grades, it would be worse. And the last thing I want to show you quickly is how to look at what it looks like for a student. So if you go to your drop-down menu again and go to User Report, then you can choose a student. We only have one in our course right now, so we'll select the student. And you can see from the student perspective what they're going to see. So they're going to see there's no grades entered for that, no grades entered for homework, presentations. They have 100 for participation, and what they got on the midterm, and how that's being calculated and the contribution to the overall course. So they can kind of get a sense of where they stand in the class, because it's additive based on your weightings. And I think that is it for now. Hopefully that is helpful, and I will create more tutorials as more information is needed. Thank you.